Welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about renegotiation or self-initiated negotiation. What happens behind the scenes when you initiate a negotiation with your boss? Now, this is video 7 of an 8-video series. If you want to watch the entire video series, then just head to my channel and click on the Art of Negotiation playlist.
The next type of negotiation that we need to talk about is a negotiation that you initiate. And so this is one that happens in your current role because often something happened like job creep or a learning opportunity. So job creep is where maybe your supervisor retired or left the workplace and you've taken on additional responsibilities. You volunteered to do so or you've been asked to do so. There was never a conversation about compensation or the needs that you have to do that successfully. It was just assumed or assigned to you, and time has gone by. A second circumstance might be that, and this is really common for women, where you're offered a learning opportunity or a growth development opportunity, where you might be given additional tasks, project leadership roles, those types of things, because your boss sees in you the potential for leadership. Now, these are really great opportunities, and I don't want you to think that you should be turning them down. I actually really encourage learning opportunities when they're defined, when they are defined by specific terms, like how long are we going to do this? What's the time-bound nature of this? Is there a specific project that's attached? Like, is this about particular deliverables and demonstrating capacity or building capacity to be able to achieve that, the project solution? And what is the terms of renegotiation? So at what point are we going to assess my competency and compensate me for that work? Because taking on more work for a learning opportunity, but never being recognized for that monetarily, is uncool. Doing that over a 3-month period because it's a specific project and you're going to get an intense learning experience with lots of mentorship and supports around you, it can be a phenomenal development opportunity. But when it's like you're going to take on some leadership roles and do these extra things, and often these are things that the leader doesn't enjoy doing, so he really just hands them off to you, and there's no timeline defined, and you don't really know how success would be determined. That's a suspect one. And that one, if you're getting those offers in your workplace, you need to push for specific terms. That's what you need to negotiate for. But often we find ourselves in these roles, and certainly during the global pandemic, so many women, so many employees just generally had to step into roles because there were gaps and there were needs. But when this becomes an ongoing function of your role, and it's not part of how you're compensated or supported, then that's a problem, and that's worthy of opening a negotiation. I see a lot of women making mistakes in this kind of negotiation, and they do it, and I know where they're coming from because I've been in this role myself. They do it out of frustration. And so over a period of time, maybe they drop subtle hints that they're not happy, or they make snide remarks about, well, if you paid me for the work that you're doing. So there's this air of negativity and a lack of appreciation that comes up in small ways over time. And then it all blows up, and they come into a meeting with their supervisor, armed for battle, with what they want and what their demands are, and a list of all of their accomplishments, and a very confrontational strategy that they've really built for themselves. And it's not coming from a place of empathy. It's coming from a place of frustration, of really strong personal frustration. And I get that. But to be successful in an in-job negotiation, you can't take that approach, because what happens is pretty quickly it becomes like those really terrible arguments with your spouse where you're bringing up things, like you're defending something that you did 20 years ago. I'm just aging myself here, but those conversations are not set up for success, and they tend to turn confrontational. They can often turn really ugly and damage the relationship. And this is where we start to see reputations of women, because of course it's the women whose reputation is damaged as a result. But this is where we see the reputation of women sometimes declining because they're seen as confrontational or demanding, expectant, those types of things, when they're really just frustrated. They're frustrated and they're hurt that they're not being recognized for the value that they bring to the organization. So, how do you do this well? Again, we're going to build on this over the next couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about how to release that frustration and channel it into an effective way of negotiating. But what this should look like in a successful negotiation is a series of conversations that lead to a negotiated discussion. So the series of conversations doesn't start with snide remarks. It doesn't start with underhanded comments or little, asterisk kinds of comments. It starts with a declaration of intent. And so in a meeting, 3 weeks out, maybe 4 weeks out from when you intend on having a negotiation conversation, then that's when you're going to declare your intent to your supervisor. And that might be 5 minutes as part of your regular meeting with that person. And you say, I've been doing this work for a while, and I feel like I've gotten some really strong development, and I've learned, and da-da-da-da-da. And in a few weeks, I would really appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you and talk about what I need to do this role effectively on a go-forward basis, about my compensation, other things that might be up for grabs for you at that time. So you start that conversation with a declaration of intent. And over the next coming weeks, you strategically build in the opportunity to share your successes and have your supervisor recognize deliberately exactly how valuable you are to the organization. So this is something that's hard for us because we don't brag generally as women. We talk about we talk about the team. We talk about, what the organization has achieved, even though we've done a lot of the work. I have done a lot of the work. I can't even say it on this video. And so this actually takes a little bit of training on your part to be able to speak about the work that you've led during this period of time when you're not being compensated for it, in a way that reflects on the work that you have done. And so you're going to use the next few weeks to talk about that with your supervisor during those regular meetings. You're going to bring forward maybe a highlight reel, a list of where you're at with particular projects and how successful they are in achieving their metrics. You're going to bring forward success stories and talk about the things that you've done to advance them. So really introduce into every one of those conversations a new component, and that is a component of, I hate to say self-bragging, but identifying and telling your story in a way that shows how much you shine. So we'll talk about specific things that you can do to do that. But over the course of a couple of weeks, you're going to bring those in, and you're going to talk about the successes that you've led within your area and under these new responsibilities. And then when you sit down with your boss for that negotiation conversation, it's scheduled in that person's calendar as, conversation about compensation, or conversation about the permanent nature of my role, or whatever it is that you're seeking to secure as part of this negotiation. You want to be really clear about that. So when you book it in their calendar, it's not personal conversation or something that's secretive or weird. You shouldn't feel embarrassed to ask for the compensation that you deserve that's commensurate with the work that you're doing. So you're going to be open and honest about it. You're going to book, an hour meeting. And when you go into that meeting, you're going to have a lot of fun. You may cry. It may bring up emotion, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay. But you're going to go in practiced, and you're going to go in with your argument laid out in such a way that your boss, by the end of that conversation, is nodding and wanting to say yes. So there's this thing that happens to us psychologically. And you'll know this if you've ever if you've ever had a really great salesperson. They get you to say yes. Have you ever blah? Oh, yeah. And did you enjoy it? Yeah. When people are nodding and saying yes, it actually sparks a hormonal response in us. And we feel good saying yes to others. As human beings, we like to make other people happy. And so you can use this in your negotiation conversation by talking about all of the things that you did together and you accomplished with them, and aren't you proud of this, and can you believe that we did this? And so throughout that conversation, you have the opportunity to get them to nod and agree and feel like they're part of this. And then by the time you lay out what your negotiated or your submission is, or what your proposal is, they're in a much more likely position to say yes, because they've been saying yes, and they're on a happy wave, and they've been talking about how successful you've been, and how, you know, they picked you out and they supported you through this really tough project, and we did it, and we exceeded the expectations, and they're nodding and they're reliving those positive experiences that they have had maybe with their supervisor throughout that time period. So that when you make the pitch, and when you say that, you know, I feel as though I've come to this point and I'd like to do this work on a go forward basis, and to do that, I'd like to be compensated at this level, and I feel like I need to bring in an administrative assistant at halftime to help me. Your boss is much more likely to say yes, right? You've brought them into a positive frame of mind. They see the opportunity for shared success, building on the success that you've brought them before. And they're really just in this state of openness. I know this sounds fluffy and light, and it maybe sounds a little bit manipulative, but that, as contrasted to the situation where you come in a personal meeting or in a regular meeting and you say, this isn't fair, and this is what I want, and I found out that Johnny is making $30,000 more and I'm doing more work, you can see how that would lead to a very different experience. So the difference, though, between a negotiated, you know, an in-job experience and a new one is that your boss doesn't expect it, right? And so in an in-job negotiation where you're initiating it, your supervisor has to have some awareness in advance that you're planning to do this, and provided that your performance has been good and that you are able to outline a justification why your skill set is commensurate with a particular level of compensation or benefits or other work terms, there's a strong likelihood of a yes there. There's a strong likelihood of a yes, or at least not a no. There's a very strong likelihood of a no if you barge in frustration, right? And so what your goal is at the end of that conversation is either is a yes, of course, is a yes, I love this and you're right, you should be negotiated. I mean, that's what we all want to hear, that you should be compensated for the incredible work that you have done. Often what you will hear is, you're right, you should be negotiated, or you should be compensated for the incredible work that you've done, but I need to talk to HR. I need to know what the next steps are or what I can do. And that's okay. That is better than a no. That is actually very good, provided that you are committed to following up. So again, one of the biggest mistakes that I coach women through is that they have that conversation and then they assume that their boss is going to take it forward and deal with it, but they never hear anything about it again. And so then 3 months later or 5 months later, they blow up at their boss and say, you were supposed to, and you said you were going to, but they never followed up. And so key to any kind of an initiated negotiation is your role in following up and maintaining a commitment to staying on top of the progress of that work. So depending on the nature of your organization, it could be as simple as your boss signing a piece of paper, or the complexity of having to get a whole raft of approvals in place. And if you're in the public service, there's probably a whole host of bureaucratic processes that have to take place to get that in place for you. But if you leave it on the shoulders, on the desk of your supervisor, there's a very strong possibility that they will forget. So keep in mind the human nature of every person that you work with, and you yourself are guilty of emails falling off of your screen and you forgetting about them. We are all guilty of those kinds of things. And so instead of putting that weight on your supervisor, remember that you have a commitment to follow up. So if you walk out with you know what, I agree, I think you deserve compensation. I need to talk to HR to be able to see. Then your first step should be to document that conversation in an email and forward it to your boss and say, this was the conversation that we had, and you agreed to follow up with HR and see what was necessary for next steps. Here's an outline of what we talked about, and please let me know what I can do to help move this forward. That might mean rewriting your job description or writing down the additional tasks, or there's probably some paperwork that your boss maybe doesn't want to do because it's a pain in the butt. And so offering to take on those tasks or in some way move this forward is really useful at that stage, but also indicating that you will follow up, and you'll follow up either maybe at your next meeting, or you'll follow up within 2 to 3 weeks to see where we're at in the process. And you have to follow up. You have to follow up, and you have to be consistent over time. So if in 2 weeks your boss says, oh yeah, I forgot, say, no problem. Is there anything that I can do to help you move this along? Again, do you want me to rewrite the job description? Would you like me to take a draft of the paperwork that needs to be done? I'm happy to, obviously I have a vested interest here. Let me know what I can do to help move this along. And your boss may take you up on that, or you may just have to say, and that's okay, and I'll keep following up. I'll follow up in a couple of weeks to see where things are at, and we'll go from there. You cannot let your guard down. You have to continue to be persistent. This is like this takes time, and in some large organizations this can take months and months. In some organizations this is done with a stroke of a pen, and the next day you've been promoted, you've been put into a new position. But in those organizations where there's a lot of bureaucratic processes, then you need to be prepared to be comfortable following up over and over and over again. Don't apologize for it. Your boss agreed to it. And you've documented the positive nature of that conversation. So again, we'll go through specific ways of outlining your offer, your proposal, and how to set up that conversation, different ways of presenting your stories as you move through your the weeks before that negotiated conversation. But understand that when you're negotiating for an in-job promotion or opening a new negotiation within your role, it is a different process than what you would experience on the other side when you're negotiating a new job, because that expectation for negotiation isn't there. So you really have to build the awareness and acceptance of your supervisor that you're coming for that negotiation and that you deserve that negotiated agreement, and then build that commitment through your own work and through follow-up to actually execute on that negotiated agreement.
Thanks for watching. If you want more videos on negotiation like this, then make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, while you're here, leave me a comment. Tell me if this was helpful or how you plan on implementing what you learned. And if you want to support my work while you level up your negotiation skills, then head to the link below where you can purchase my negotiation guide. In the meantime, I want to thank you for watching. I will see you here next time.